Hello, everyone. Welcome to the real life, right? Healing in real life.
Right. Absolutely. I'm trying to go live here on Instagram. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Healing the Whole Body podcast. I am Sherri, and this is Becky, and we go live every Monday evening at 7 p.m. Central Time. So we want to welcome you. We want to welcome our to Twitch. We want to welcome YouTube. We want to welcome our Facebook pages, which I don't think we're connected today.
Now, YouTube was having issues. I don't know what their
Was
deal
it?
was. Yeah, I tried connecting, and Facebook
Hmm.
is Facebook's in its own land. So again, welcome to real life, friends.
Right? Oh my goodness. So, well, never mind about Facebook tonight, but our Instagram, and eventually we will upload these to iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. So it is Monday. It is Monday, August 18th. How is your Monday, my dear?
It's a Monday. Um, yeah, real life, right? So the behind the scene, and the the non highlight reel, right? It was a Monday. It's school started last week, but it really didn't start because it started late. So officially, grade school and high school and all of that started this week. Preschool starts this week. So dealing with kids, dealing with multiple buses, multiple bus drivers, plus my own children. It's been a Monday. It has been a Monday.
Absolutely, I agree. It's been a weekend. What can I say?
It has.
Um,
Well,
so,
you
uh, well,
you've
I was
had an
going to say
exciting weekend, though.
we have. We titled the podcast today, "Healing in Real Life," and
Mm.
we're both living that. We all live that, right?
Yeah, and that's where, just because we're on here, just because we're on social media,
Yeah,
and everything else, a lot of times all you see is those highlight reels. But let's face it, right? It's real life. It's messy. It's complicated. It's just sometimes downright inconvenient. So I mean, there's going to be those things, and that's what I wanted to kind of get through tonight is, if we can do it in our situation, right? It's not that we have a perfect life. It's not that we have this is all we do, right? We both have jobs outside of our coaching, outside of the podcast, outside, you know, and so that's where having that compassion, I guess. Like I said, you had a busy weekend, right? We had to shift some things around Friday,
we did.
with the community, because it's life, and
Yep.
I'll have to do that here in a couple weeks. Shift things and shift work. I had to take off work, and it's just those type of things, and that's where our personal healing comes from. So
Right.
how do we juggle all this? How do we balance all this and still continue to seek that healing?
Correct. Correct. Well, I mean, obviously, right? You have to have a foundation for your health. And then, you know, what does real health look like beyond numbers and charts?
Mm-hmm.
Health is more than just the absence of being sick or having an illness. It's energy, it's clarity, and it's resilience. Um, and it's personal. That's one of the things that I think is very hard for our clients that we run into is what works for one body or mind may not work for another. And we see that all the time.
Absolutely, which is one of the things we're going to talk about. So, anyone that is joining us here tonight and was expecting the roundtable will actually be next week, because, again, real life. Our third coach ended up and had life events, and so she had to postpone. So that will be next week. But that will be one of the things that we definitely dive into with the roundtable is the coaching perspective on N equals one, and those that are putting a blanket out there for people, right? trying to coach from that aspect of, this should end up in work, or this does work, and everyone should do it. And it's just, you really have to look at yourself. You have to look at your life, right? What I do is different than what you do.
Mhm.
And there's no way you couldn't. I mean, you may be able to do parts of, right, what I do, but
Right.
the food is going to be different. The stress is going to be different. The living is going to end up and be different. There's so much of that framework, right? That foundation that we each have to end up and put in there, because personally, this, we'll talk about the aspect of stress in real time, right? You end
Yeah.
up and have different type of stress than what I do, right? We have children, we have work, we have relationships, we have unexpected events that end up and pop up. Um, then maybe they disrupt our sleep, right? We talk about sleep a lot as coaches.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and there's times where, I know stress at work has disrupted your sleep. You don't get that, quality deep sleep. I
Nope.
end up, and for some crazy, connected space, I wake up at random times for random reasons. Um, Not random reasons, a higher power that typically wakes me up. Um, to alert that something is going on, right?
Mhm.
Typically, it may be with my kids. We've also talked in the past of where having that having that deep connection with someone, and having them speaking while I'm coming to you and sleeping. Um, but then again, that can end up and be disruptive, right? So you're not
Right.
getting that restful, but I also don't beat myself up for it, right? There's other things
Right.
in life that we know work for stress, and that can work in real time. I mean, we sat down in a breathwork meeting and seen in real time with your CGM how much of a difference breathwork made.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. When I think my greatest number was 27 points.
Mm-hmm.
Just breath work, and I
Yep.
watched my blood sugar go down that much. So it was kind of wild. But yeah.
But that,
Um,
but that also goes to show that we're not immune to stress, right?
right.
As much as what we talk about, these different, go tos, breath work, tapping, grounding, all of that, and how we anchor ourselves, it's not always enough, right? We have to be diligent about putting some of this other stuff in, because we practice what we teach, right? We live it. It's not
Yes.
just, oh, hey, go do this. No, it's like,
Right.
we're doing this, but maybe you need to tweak it this way.
Right. Well, I mean, is inevitable, right? But it's how you respond to it is key. And I think that's the thing. Personally, you and I, we do practice what we preach, right? Because we know how important it is to deal with just let's just take stress. Let's just talk about that mental and emotional health. Let's just focus in on that right now. Number one, it's self awareness and expression and regulation. Um, Mental clarity helps support your decision making. I mean, uh, creativity, relationships, it just really expands out. You don't realize that talking it out, and that's something that you and I, because I've been under a lot of stress, and you were like journal, and I was like, oh my goodness, I can't journal. This is like another thing I got to do, and you were like, you have a phone, and then I took it a step further, and on Instagram, I've been journaling through stories. So I just get on and just kind of talk and ramble on, and really that's my journaling. But I also am very aware that other people are watching, listening, and going through their own mental and emotional whatever it is, that stress, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I can't tell you how many clients I've had come to me and say, I'm not stressed. I don't have any stress in my life. I'm not stressed. But stress doesn't always announce itself. It's not like,
Yeah.
the dinging, right? You're stressed, right?
Right.
It really sneaks in, and it can start with, a wake up through the night, or maybe the
Mhm.
kids end up and need you, or you end up and you come home from work and the spouse is having a bad day, and his mood, right? Those around us, there's this whole mirror neurons, and so this his stress can end up and be perceived by the body also as stress. Maybe you end up and have some work stress of your own, or health stress. Maybe you're fasting, maybe you're overworking out, maybe there's all of these unexpected curveballs that can end up and be thrown and land in your lap all at once, and sometimes that feels very overwhelming. But that
Mhm.
is also when the nervous system shifts into overdrive. And so you get into this fight, flight, freeze aspect. And like you said, we feel it too. We're
Mhm.
not immune to this.
Nope.
There is so much of a difference. But the difference in us is we are able to learn what it is, identify what it is, pause, and recalibrate,
Right.
right? Refocus. How many times have, I mentioned on my social media that it's time to end up and refocus, right? There's
Mhm.
things that
Mhm.
you start to kind of get, it's not always black and white. There's times where you get into this gray area, and it's like, okay, bring that back, right? Or maybe you're, transitioning and testing out a few different things, and that doesn't work, right? Go back to your baseline. And that's what I always tell people or tell clients is, what can you do on your worst day? What
Right.
is the bare minimum? That's your foundation.
Yep.
Anything above and beyond that is money in the bank, right?
Right.
Uh, but if you start to notice that this stress is coming in, there's small things that you can end up and do, right? My personal go-to is breath work, right? I did breath work at 3 a.m. this morning. Um, not gonna end up and sugarcoat it, friends. There was a stressful event that happened at 3 a.m. and I was awake. I couldn't get back to sleep. I laid there on my back. I put my hands over my belly and I started to do breath work. And I did something simple. It was just the 478 method of breath work. Inhale, hold, exhale, and that really ends up and resets the nervous system. And I did end
Mhm.
up back asleep, but I still did all of my non-negotiables, right? I went outside for sunrise. I went outside for grounding, you know, and there is power in saying no. Knowing that I had a bad night last night, or un unoptimal, I'll put it that way. It wasn't horrible, but it could have been better. Um, I knew today that I was not going to end up and go above and beyond, right? I was not
Mhm.
going to start a new workout routine or start, anything above my basics.
Right.
So I still worked, I still did all of that, but it was okay to end up and say no. And I don't
Right.
feel guilt over that. And that's where, people really need to give themselves permission to rest. We are always looking at
Mhm.
being these high achievers, and we're hard on ourselves when we don't end up and achieve that. But
Right. Well, and you do a quick self check, right? Am I reacting instead of responding? Do I feel disconnected from myself and others? And is my body asking for rest, but I keep pushing? Now, those are some key factors right there. And if you say yes to any one of those, you might want to start exploring some stress reducing strategies. And again, that's where Becky and I individually as coaches, we can help with that.
mhm, absolutely, I can't tell you how many protocols, if you will, for different individuals that, I mean, they all look different, but how many different protocols I've put into place because, again, everyone is different, right? Someone may do
Right.
tapping. I know Coach Sly's in the chat, but and says the touch points, I've used the touch points. I've
Mm-hmm.
used, different poses such as legs up the wall with red light. There's
Yep.
just so many different things that you can end up and utilize
Yep.
to help with that. And we're not, like I said, you can't avoid it.
Right.
It's going to end up and happen. There's going to be times where you feel overwhelmed. There's going to be times where you're more reactive instead of responsive. There's times that you're going to be short fused and snappy. It's
Right.
all about keeping that consistency and anchoring, right? It's not about discipline necessarily. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent.
Correct. Well, and let's talk about, if we can switch gears, the environmental health, right? The surroundings that you have really does affect your well-being more than you think,
No, absolutely.
right? And I mean, we're talking simple things: clean air, natural light, quiet spaces, clutter and chaos, natural exposure boost immunity and the mood. You know, one of the environmental health things that took place for me literally uh, yesterday, was it yesterday or Saturday? It was yesterday. It was yesterday. I got to do laundry. Well, for those that have followed, we live in a travel trailer. We bought um, a lot of acreage in the middle of nowhere. And this Friday, we actually moved our travel trailer to the property. We are now home. And that's what Becky was alluding to earlier. Um, we're still in our travel trailer. We had to get, I mean, we had to put a driveway in. We had to get electric put in. We had to get a septic put in. We had to have a well drilled, right? We had to do all these things before we could ever attempt to move out here. It's taken us over a year to do things. Things don't move fast out in the middle of nowhere. And one of the things that we had to do was we had to buy one of those pre-built buildings. Um, because once we moved out here in the travel trailer, we had to do laundry. Well, I don't have a laundromat close, so we put a building. We ran electric to it. We insulated it, and we brought our washer and dryer out there, our upright freezer, and tools and all kinds of stuff. It's all hooked up. Yesterday I was able to do laundry, and you don't realize the toxic the toxins that you're exposed to with even laundry detergent and fabric softeners and dryer sheets. um I use wool dryer balls. um that is my fabric sheets that go in the dryer. They're just the wool dryer balls. Now I could add some essential oil to it if I wanted to, but I don't. Um, and I use very clean laundry detergent. And before, in the RV park that we had to stay in, we it was a community launder laundromat, and the smells, the odors, the fabric softener, the artificial, all of that, that's toxic to
Mm-hmm.
your body. And I'll let you elaborate on that. I'll finish my little story, but one of the things I was noticing, and trust me, poor Becky heard me all the time. I'm like, my clothes smell, I can't take it, And guess what? Yesterday, my clothes didn't smell. They smelled. Actually didn't have smell. They smelled clean to me with no scent. Right. So I'll let you elaborate on that environmental toxin.
Well, and there's a lot of environmental toxins. It doesn't matter whether
Right.
it's in our home, whether it's outside, home,
Yes.
community, everywhere, right? There is so many.
Mhm.
When we look at, especially the air quality, like indoor air is often, 2 to 5 times more polluted even than outdoor air. Just because, like you said, the home giving off, depending what you're cooking, depending what you have plugged in, depending, cleaning products, possible mold in your home, breathing this in constantly creates and drives inflammation and oxidative stress. And
Mhm.
so any of these, what they're called, VOCs, right? Mold spores, VOCs, the lack of fresh oxygen, the body ends up and perceives that as a stress. It's a threat, right?
Mhm.
So for many, they can end up and open the windows. But we have we have many followers and friends that live up north, and because there's a lot of wildfires going, you can't necessarily open the windows, right?
Right.
I utilize house plants to help. I also have an air filter downstairs because let's face it, my house is like a little petri dish, but it just the more you are constantly bombarded with this, not only does it disrupt the hormone system, but it also interrupts and bogs down, if you will, a lot of the other organ systems.
Mhm.
So, the liver and just the lungs and everything, right? Because our skin is the largest organ, but it's very porous. So a lot of these toxins that we are, exposed to, they end up and they get into our system and it affects our health. And so really when we look at the air quality of what we breathe, what we use, all of that is so important. And can we, control it? I mean, yeah, to an extent, right? You can control what is brought into your home. You can
Mhm.
control what's in your home. If you have mold in your home, there's ways to, mitigate that. There's proper ways to end up and mitigate that. There's ways to reduce the inflammation in your body. You just have to look at some of these things as, what it is, right?
Right.
Environmental stressors. And so, is your environment leading to healing or is it leading to you being sick? And that's a really hard question for people to end up and sit back on. And I was just on a coaching session last week and the coaching client talking about, home environment. She was purging her home. She had donated some stuff, she had cleaned that up. She was working on making, her bedroom a sanctuary. And it's just you really do end up and feel better
Mhm.
when you take the stuff right
Right.
out, because clutter and the lighting and the chaos and all of that, your brain is constantly like on overdrive. And that can
Mhm.
even happen with noises,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure you notice a difference living in the RV park and traffic coming and going in there, and just people, right, being around.
Yes.
And
Yep.
there's times even myself that I take that step back because my house tends to end up and be very loud Monday through Friday. And this constant, like hit to the nervous system of this buzzing and chronic, background noise, whether that's TV, music, kids, buzzing appliances, whatever it is.
Yep.
Now, my husband's a lot different, right? He loves music. Music ends up and, you know, for him, it is soothing, right? We're
Right.
we're different on we're different on that aspect. Give me outside, give me silence, give me, nature
Mhm.
sounds, anything along those lines. I'm good to go, right? I'm going to end up and restore that balance. And I noticed it Saturday morning. So he had, been listening to some music and I was doing my thing. Well, then he left and I'm like, I'm just done. I am so done with that. I want I want quiet. And so I shut it off and it was just the silence,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It was so nice. There wasn't, all this intentional sound going on in the background. And I was just able to really end up and center myself and be in my home. Yes, I work from home. I end up and I'm constantly in my home, but there is just that difference in even the sound environment.
Big
So
time. Big
that's
time.
one of the other reasons why I do end up and go outside,
Yeah.
because I love listening to the birds. I
Yeah.
love, you know, someone ended up in one of my morning videos. The neighbor had a pivot going, and it was the noise of, the pivot motor. And sometimes there's a train in my, morning grounding videos and stuff. But to me, that doesn't it doesn't overload the sensory of the body. It is calming to me. I can sit out there and listen to that motor hum, because again, I've lived in Podunkville. So to me that is nice, right? And
Yeah.
that's, like, it's not overwhelming to me. I love the
Well,
birds over that, but
right. Right. One of the things in my Instagram stories that my I was journaling, I talked about the difference between living in Houston and living in the middle of nowhere. And the light pollution was
mhm,
a factor. We lived in a subdivision. The house kind of semi behind us kept a light on all night. It was a floodlight that they kept on all night. And well, that shines into your windows. And then the I called them the idiots next door because got it got to be so overwhelming and aggravating. But they put those eaves lights around their
mhm,
house, and I don't even know what type of light bulbs they put in it, but it literally looked like a an airport runway. And I'm not joking. We would stand. I think I sent you pictures one
mhm,
time, and I'm like, but the light pollution literally lit up our backyard, which in turn lit up the inside of my house in the middle of the night because they kept the lights on all night. And yeah, you would think, oh, go talk to them. You didn't talk to these people, right? And I did not have to turn a light on in my house at night because it was so lit up. And that's again where the blue blocking glasses and that kind of stuff came in handy. The other was the noise pollution. Where we were at, there were highways around us and interstates, and so you could hear the street racing
mhm.
happening all night, all day long. You could be in the house, and even during the day you heard lawnmowers going, and because people had their yards being manicured, and it was this constant noise pollution. And it wears all it just wore me out. Out here, I hear birds. I may hear a cow mooing from one of the two pastures next to us. Yesterday afternoon, which was hysterical, or actually yesterday early evening, um, we heard a quail, a bob white. And if anybody knows that, it sounds like they're saying Bob White, um, outside the camper. And he didn't stop. And he didn't stop. And he was apparently really liking where he was at because he didn't stop. And I'm like, said to my husband, well, he's happy. And a little while later, my husband's like, he's still happy. And I'm like, yep. Finally, I grabbed my flip flops, put them on my feet, grabbed another pair of flip flops because I'm going out and I'm going to start slapping flip flops, like making noise. And as soon as I opened the door, it heard and it flew off. It was like, is that all it took? But it was just funny that such polar opposites of that environmental pollution, that even that bird, after a while, it was like, dude, you need to move on.
Some of them can get a little annoying, but you'll end up and get used to it. But going back to your neighbors and the lights, and that's,
Mm,
people end up and look at lighting things up, right? Because unfortunately, security purposes, we kind of end up and
right?
have to have it, right? We think, let's light it up, let's make things so we can see outside. so that no one ends up and tries to end up and break in.
Right.
But what people don't end up and acknowledge about that light is that artificial blue light sends the wrong signal, right? If you end up and you have blue light at night, it tells the brain the opposite, right? It tells it midday that we should end up and be alert. So this bright blue light through the house, it's suppressing that melatonin. It's disrupting the leptin signaling, and it's keeping this nervous system in this whole, sympathetic overdrive
Mm-hmm.
state. And many people don't realize that. Like I
Yep.
said, they look at it for safety. And that's one of the things, living out where we do in, kind of like you in the middle of nowhere, we don't, yes, we have, a yard light, but for security purposes, we put cameras up that can end up and see
Mm-hmm.
it in the dark so that
Right.
we didn't have to put a light on the garage or
Mm-hmm.
light on the back door or a light on the deck. you know yes, we end up and we have lights out there that we can end up and turn on for more of an ambient, but it's an incandescent bulb. I looked at the different types of bulbs, so it's not this bright LED type bulb, it's more of like an amber glow.
Mm-hmm.
And even at that, I'm still set in my morning light because that morning sunlight sets the cortisol rhythm, the dopamine, the serotonin, not only sunrise, but UVA. And so it gives this body this signal that we are safe, right?
Yep.
A lot of
Yep.
people end up hit their morning and they start kicking on light switches, right? Um, I can't tell you how many times I've finally got my household switched over to the fact that we don't turn on a bunch of lights first thing in the morning. We use red lights, or we use our salt lamp, or things like that. But it's just really shifting that. And like I said, many
Yeah.
people don't realize even the people around you it affects,
Yep.
right? Just look at their property, and when you're living in such a heavily populated area, that's hard.
Mm-hmm. Well, I lived in my blue blockers, right? The red, the yellow, the clear. Like I had, I think I had orange too.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I lived in it. I mean, I got a pair on right now. Why? Because I'm sitting in front of my laptop and my monitor. Well, I don't have the software to change it. So, I use the blue blocking glasses to help with that because, you know, Central Time, it is literally 7:42 p.m. I want my body to know that it's time that we're going to start shutting down here. And so I can go to sleep because I want that melatonin to rise and the cortisol to lower. As soon as we're done, I'm going outside to watch the sunset. These are coming off, and I'm going to watch the sunset. Those are signals to my body that it is time, right, to start that shutdown process. And I'm really consistent with that. And before, I was having to get up way earlier, and I was whining to Becky that I can't, I'm up before the sun and I can't, and I had to turn on lights. I couldn't keep my glass. I'm putting makeup on. I'm doing stupid stuff like that, where to a certain degree, right? But at some point, I got to turn the light on because I'm old and I can't see and I have to have light. So, well, this morning, because we changed, I don't have to get up as early. First thing I did this morning was I opened my door and I stood there and I literally could see the dawn starting. And it was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, thank goodness we're back to the non-negotiables.
Yep. Absolutely. That's what I was just looking at because unfortunately we're in the season where our days are getting shorter, and
Yeah.
I can hear my husband outside mowing, and I'm like, what time even is, sunset now? But because
Yeah.
it seems to me like it's getting darker, like I'm sitting
Right.
here in the dark. But
Well, and then the thing we didn't even touch on was our physical health, right?
yeah, yeah, well, and that's where everyone is different, right? If I ended up and told you physically that I wanted you to go to the gym, 3, 4 days a
Yeah.
week, and I wanted you to have this type of a workout, and I wanted you to have, X, Y, and Z, right? Are you going to end up and stay consistent with it? Are you going to stay, I don't even stay consistent with something like that. And so that's where on your physical side, What works for you? What
Hmm.
type of movement, what type of activities do you enjoy?
Right. For me, right now, it's just been intentional movement, right? It's making sure that I park uh, further out and I walk, right? It's like, I walk around wherever, if we're
Mhm.
in Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, which we're not sponsored by any of that. But I'm just saying, my husband's down one aisle and I start walking aisles and I'm intentional movement. How about you? What intention? I know you do intentional movement too.
I was just say for me right now, because it is so nice out, I like to go outside and walk, and I'll literally
Yeah.
just walk laps around my house. Like the other day, I ended up and I went like not our whole perimeter of our property, but what we maintain, what we end up when we
Mhm.
mow, and it was about a quarter of a mile completely around it. But I've also been dealing with like a pinched nerve muscle in my back, and so the uneven walking on the ground and through the ditch and around and all of that, it was a little bit too much, so then I just did like our driveway and stuff. But just that movement, I look at any form of that type of intentional movement as medicine. And I had people ask me, do I eat before I walk? Absolutely. I eat with in 30 minutes to an hour of getting up. So my walk is 7ish, but I'm usually up around 6. So I always have food in my system before going for a walk, because otherwise, if I end up and I go for that walk, the body's going to want to, really end up and produce the fuel I need for it. And
Mhm.
that can be very taxing also on this, the stress side of the system. So, um, to me, movement isn't just about, calories in, calories out, but it also helps the lymphatic system. It helps the exclusion zone water and the whole fascia system of the body, and all of that. So as long as you are able to get just this, even this gentle, consistent movement, maybe that's yoga, maybe that's resistance bands, maybe that's walking, whatever that training looks for you, and is enough to tell your body it's safe, but it's also time to move. And that will help to rewire. And it's not just about survival stress, right? It's not, it then doesn't think that, oh, we need to, produce a bunch of the cortisol and the stress hormones, right? Because we're going to find a bear, or we're
Right.
outrunning the bear, or, whatever the case
Right.
may be. And so, yeah, whatever that ends up and looks like. But also on the physical side, making sure that you're eating enough, because
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
healing comes from feeding the mitochondria. You have, like I said, I eat my breakfast before I go. I make sure it's,
Mhm.
animal protein and fats, a healthy fat,
Yep.
which again, we'll kind of get more into fats next week when we have Coach Sly here too. But making sure that you're giving your body the right fuel, because this whole gut brain connection,
Oh,
right? You've got to restore
right.
that. You've got to be able to focus on the nutrient density. So it's not always about restriction or elimination, but it's about what does healing take, and healing needs to fuel. So make sure I eat enough, go do my walking, get my movement in, get, the blood flowing, right? Um, and then be able to add in strength as it comes.
Well, I was going to say that's one of the biggest things we both see with clients is they undereat.
Mhm.
You know,
Absolutely.
you can't fuel your body, give it the energy source it needs, um, and not be in a stress situation. And I've talked about it many times in the past where when I was doing hard fasting, long, long periods of fasting, it was a stress to my body, and my body just rebelled. Well, how did it rebel? Well, I couldn't lose weight. My blood sugars were going up, not down. and it was just a stressful situation, and I always cringe, and I know you do too, when we see people that, oh, I fast every week, oh, I fast, 3 days this week and 4 days last week, and it's like, and you're just like, oh my goodness, you're not nourishing your body enough.
Mhm. Yep. I literally just told a coaching client tonight that she needed to change up her fasting. She was doing a lot of 18-6,
Mm,
and that can end up and be a stress, especially if you are a older woman, whether you be, perimenopause, menopause. That type of fasting can end up, especially if you're doing it strict, right? The body
yeah.
likes fluctuation. The body likes changing with seasons. There's a lot of variables there. But if you are doing this consistent, fasting or over fasting or long periods of fasting, I ended up and I told her to cycle in even just a 14-hour fast,
Mhm.
14 to 16 hours, or some I've even told 12, especially as we start to get into the winter time where,
Mhm.
our nights are a little bit longer, doing even just circadian fasting, right? Eating with sun up, eating before the sun is down is enough of a fast. But what that
Yep.
does is it avoids this extra stress on the liver and on the hormones and that whole side of the system. So yeah, there is a time where fasting can be beneficial, but there's also a time where it can be overdone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, basically what we're saying is, real life healing, it's more than a checklist, right? Um, it's a rhythm. It's reclaiming your sense of wholeness. It's listening to your body. It's creating space for grief, joy, and everything in between. It's, honoring the beauty in life, whether it's something like Becky and I, who are out in the middle of nowhere, we enjoy our silence. Is it, what is it that, you know, are you chasing your healing, or are you letting it kind of find you? Because your body really is telling you what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and healing isn't about perfection. It's not about the the hustle and the bustle and push 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 harder harder. It's about creating this safety, creating a rhythm, creating that natural flow of consistency, because what you can do in your daily life, right, that's all that we need to end up and look at. When your body feels supported through movement, sleep, nourishment, rest, breath, right, it naturally has the ability to heal. And so, if, as I've said before, trust the process, honor the season that you're in, and remember that the quiet work you do today is building this resilient body. It's building a better version of you tomorrow if you allow yourself to get out of the small picture and look at the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And don't forget, Becky and I are available. We are taking clients. So if you want someone to come alongside of you and give you suggestions and ideas and an accountability, Becky and I are available for that. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment. It helps with the algorithms. We are not sponsored by anyone, but it helps move the algorithms. And the more we get, the likes, subscribes, and comments, the more it gets out there and more people can find us. So we do appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful Monday evening, and we will see you next week for the roundtable.
Sounds
Coach's
good.
perspective. If you have questions, make sure you have them ready, and you will get all three of us coaches' perspective on your questions. Have a wonderful